illusions. We've all seen optical illusions, and they present us a picture. The question is, what is it really saying to us? If we look at it one way, we see one thing, and if we slightly change our attention and focus it somewhere else, we see something else. And the famous example of this is the vase versus the two faces. If you concentrate on the black background, or what we call negative space in art, then what you see prominent is the two faces. But if you project your image now onto the front, you see a vase. So the question is, we're getting same information, but our brain is interpreting it in different ways. And you know, that illusion is an example of what our life is like. Our life is an illusion. We're living two things at the same time, but we're only paying attention to one. We live in a material world with all the events and happenings of our life, but we also live in the background world of our spiritual life. And the question is, which do we make focused? It's just a matter, just like in that picture, of what we focus on becomes what is the prominent thing at that moment. And the same thing happens with our spiritual and material lives. If we're only concentrating every moment on our material life, then the spiritual life goes into the background and we don't pay too much attention to it. But if we start to focus on the spiritual life and put the material life a little bit behind us, we'll have a more balanced approach and a new perspective on what we're seeing. They're not separate from one another. They're combined in the same picture, but they present two different perspectives. And the choice that we make for which one is going to be prominent is ours. We can either let the material world totally take over, or we can let the spiritual world take over. And what we need to do is have a balance between the both, because they're connected intimately, just as that picture is, intimately with one another. We're not all spiritual and we're not all material. We're both spiritual and material. And for that reason, we have to take care of both of them. However, the one that seems to get the shrift and the one that seems to get the less attention is the one we don't see. But that's the one that's most important. Because in your life and my life, this material world, at the end, will fade away. And we will live on the spiritual plane. But the question is, how is that spiritual plane going to be when we get there? It comes from a daily preparation of our daily life to make that spiritual plane the best that it can be when we get to heaven. And so we do this by putting values in our life, having a morally driven life, a life where we put the values of Christ and God in our life, that the two greatest commandments in the world were love God first and foremost, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when we do these in our daily life and the daily events of our experiences, we will be living a good, God-driven life. And that's the life that will prepare us for the life hereafter, when the material disappears and the spiritual takes over. And one of the best ways to do this is to start, if you haven't, start now. To have a relationship with the God that loves you more than ever and more than you could ever know. Because this is what the spiritual life is all about. It's all about our relationship of a God who is infinitely loving, who called you out of nothing and brought you into being and loves you at this moment, because you wouldn't be here if he didn't. And that love he expects to have returned. And that's what we have to do with our lives. We have to return to God the love that he has given to us. And so how do we do that? First of all, you have to have a relationship with the God that loves you. And if you don't know him, there's a place to start. How do I get to know God? Not as somebody up there as a judge who's willing to just come down on me every time I make a mistake. No, he's a loving Father. And because he's a loving Father, that's what he wants to do. He wants to relate to you as his children. And so what we do is we very humbly and go to him, sit on his lap, and say, Dada, or Abba, or Daddy, or whatever you want to call him in an endearing term. Because he has called you by name, a name that no one else has. Because you are unique, and there's no one in the world just like you. And there's no one that will ever be able to give God back that love that he has given to you, because that's how unique you are, and that's how much he loves you. We're not in competition with anybody else. I don't have to worry about Joe or Susie or Pat or Jim or whoever, because they have their own individual uniqueness that they have to return to God. I don't have to worry about myself and my unique return of that love to God. And when I give that love to God, he's going to bless me. And he's going to turn me into the image that he wants me to be. And then when people see me, they're going to see beyond me. And they're going to see the image that God created, that he loves so dearly. And he's going to share that with all the Jims and Kathys and Pattys and Joes that are in the world. And we're all one big happy family, because we live on this planet as one. We all live on this planet as children of God. And yes, this life is somewhat of an illusion. Yes, it is living here and trying to live the hereafter at the same time. But it's up to us how we want to balance those two things. Hopefully, we will choose to live both in consciousness, and we focus on the spiritual, if not more, than the material. Because remember, the material things will fade away, as your life on earth will. But your spiritual things will last forever. So prepare now your soul to meet the God who loves you so dearly in the next life by living the kind of life he wants you to live now. And that's a life of love, peace, forgiveness, mercy, and all Christian things.